Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another edition of E.W. Jackson for President of the United States of America. Let's see. This is, I think yesterday was day 11. What is this? This is Wednesday. Let's see. Friday would have been 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I guess this is day 12. Day 12 of the mainstream media and conservative media boycott of my candidacy. Sadly, you will not see anything even acknowledging that I'm a filed candidate for President of the United States. Even though I won the nomination for Lieutenant Governor of Virginia, I've run for U.S. Senate. And even though Christians all over the country know who I am, I'm being ignored for the most part by the mainstream media. But I'm not whining about it. I'm just giving you the facts. That's the way it is. But I will not be ignored and I will not be denied. I'm an American citizen. I have a right to run for President of the United States. And sooner or later, they're going to have to acknowledge that fact. And all these so-called patriots who believe in the Constitution and believe in the Bill of Rights and believe in freedom of speech and all of that, who complained about censorship, are going to have to acknowledge that they are censoring a candidate for President of the United States. Yeah, that's right. They are. But God bless them. They'll come to their senses. they'll realize what they're doing is wrong, and they will acknowledge my candidacy. So in the meantime, please pray for me. And every time you have an opportunity, if you're on Twitter, if you're on Facebook, or you're reading some article and you got a particular, if it's a political article, and you got the email address of the editor, sit down and send them an email. Hey, how come you're not acknowledging the candidacy of E.W. Jackson for President of the United States? So I'm a supporter. He's got supporters all over the country. Why are you not acknowledging him? I mean, he's better known than some of these people who are running for president, and yet his candidacy seems to be ignored. So just you communicate your concern. You ask the question. You know, we're not cursing people out or anything like that. We're not, you know, I'm just putting it out there, and they don't understand who I am to think that I would shrink away like a violet and just kind of, you know, go away. I'm not going anywhere. In fact, as you all know, August 23rd is the debate. Now, we are working toward that. We want to make that debate. Contributions are coming in all the time. I can't say for sure that we will be on that debate floor, but I'll tell you what, I can tell you for sure we will be in this race after that debate is over. That's for sure. You can rest assured of that. I'm not going anywhere. I'm not going anywhere. And sadly, even some of my Christian colleagues and friends are kind of ignoring me. I don't know what the issue is, but God bless them. I love them. Pray for them. I know what the Lord, you know, there's an old song that says, you don't know what the Lord told me. You don't know. You weren't there. You don't know when, and you don't know where. You don't know what the Lord told me. So I know what the Lord has told me to do, and I'm just going to be faithful to what I know God has commanded me to do. And I'm going to do it with a smile on my face and love in my heart, but passionate love for this country and our Constitution and our way of life, and profound concern for the crisis that this country is in right now. And we are in a crisis. And I am not going to allow my country to be turned into a basket case and hand off to my granddaughter and your grandchildren and our great-grandchildren, a country that is a mere shadow of the constitutional republic that it has been and is supposed to be. I want to leave a shining city on a hill that every American, regardless of their income, their background, their race, if you want to call it that, or whatever, that every American can be proud that they are in this nation free citizens who can participate in the process, can have their voices heard in a nation in which we acknowledge that rights and liberties do not come from government, a president, a potentate, not even from a vote of the people, that our rights and liberties come from Almighty God, and our government is there to secure those rights. I want that to be the legacy of our country until Jesus comes. And I'm going to fight for that. And nobody is going to shut me up or stop me. So I'm in it, and thank you all for being in it with me. Now, this is very unusual. I've said this before. You know, when you're in a primary, and of course, I've seen, you know, when people say, well, you know, you are a long shot, you got a slim chance. Everybody's got a slim chance. Everybody's a long shot, except for one candidate, Donald Trump. I mean, so I don't even know what people are talking about. They say, well, I'm a long shot. I think some of these other candidates are somehow less long shots. In fact, there's some candidates in this race who cannot win the nomination. They cannot win the nomination. It is impossible. That's not true for me, because I am in sync with the base of the Republican Party, particularly the Christian evangelical base. Some of these candidates are not in sync at all. And there's just no way they're going to win the nomination. No way at all. It is impossible. That's not true for me. Now, obviously, Donald Trump's way out front. So let me say something about this indictment that may be coming down from Georgia here in the next day. I've said before, and I say this without apology, and I don't in any way feel that this damages me as a candidate. This country owes Donald Trump a great debt of gratitude. Have I always loved the things he said? No. You know, have I wished at times, man, oh, I wish he wouldn't say that. Yes, of course. But you look at the man's policies, and there's no question that for the most part, now I do have a couple of issues with some of the things, with a couple of things that he did, but for the most part, he served this country well. Now, the way the election was handled, obviously, he's got some enemies on the Republican side on that, and people who felt that he could have done something different than the way he conducted himself. This is my attitude about that. I haven't seen anything or heard anything that convinces me that Donald Trump has committed any crime. Nothing. I think that they just want to destroy him because of what he represents. And so this indictment coming down is probably going to add 2 or 3 points to his polls, because once again, people are going to look at him and say, well, he's being persecuted. But I think that's what Democrats want, because they think that he's ultimately so damaged that while he will win the Republican primary, he cannot win. This is what they think. He cannot win the general election. So, but I see no criminality here whatsoever. What I see is persecution of a man who has served this country well, and we owe him a debt of thanks. Now, could his rhetoric have been different during the whole election debacle? There's some insiders who say it could have been, yes. I can understand his having been upset, but even there, rhetoric is not crime. Saying things that people think are out of order or not in keeping with what you consider to be the decorum of the presidency, that's not a crime. So at any rate, we'll see what happens there. But let me say, having said that, having acknowledged the debt of gratitude that we owe to Donald Trump, I said he made a couple of mistakes. I tell you, I could a couple that come in mind to mind immediately. Number one is the appointment of Anthony Fauci and letting him be a spokesperson. Unmitigated disaster. Unmitigated disaster. Terrible, terrible, terrible mistake. And frankly, pushing that shot was a terrible mistake. Terrible mistake on Donald Trump's part. No question about it. And the other is appointing Christopher Wray. I mean, that was a bad appointment. Now, he's acknowledged that. Okay? And I suppose any president can make a mistake and make bad appointments. But both of those are bad. I think the Fauci appointment is worse. Both of those are bad. So that having been said, I owe him, every American owes him a debt of gratitude for what he did for the country in the 4 years he was serving as president. Well, then why are you running? I mean, he's running. Why don't you just step aside and just support Donald Trump? Because I really believe that America needs something that Donald Trump can't give right now. And that is that America needs to reconnect with our spiritual roots. America needs to come back to God. America needs to acknowledge that this nation exists because of the providence of Almighty God. Our founding fathers believed that. And most of our national heroes along the way believed that. Even Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who I got a lot of problems with in terms of opening the door to communism in this country. But even Franklin Delano Roosevelt on D-Day, as our troops were storming the beaches of Normandy, was on the radio praying with and for the American people, asking for God's intervention. If you've never heard that prayer, it's available on YouTube. You ought to listen to it. Now, why was he able to do that without the ACLU going crazy? Because people acknowledged then that we are a godly nation and that we owe our blessings and we owe our success and our prosperity to Almighty God. I believe I'm the only candidate in this race who can make that case to the American people. Donald Trump can't do it. None of the other candidates can do it. Vivek Ramaswamy can't do it because he's a Hindu. And, you know, that's not in his roots. That's not in his background. It's not in his blood. We need someone who understands that America is a Christian nation. Now, we don't have an official religion, no, but culturally, we're a Christian nation. And I don't want us to have an official religion. Let me be clear about that. You know, the left accuses me of wanting a theocracy. I don't want a theocracy. That's a disaster. What I want is a free nation, but an acknowledgement by every citizen that America culturally is a Christian country. And there's nothing wrong with that acknowledgement. In fact, to refuse to acknowledge that is to deny reality and to deny the facts and deny the truth. I believe I'm the only candidate in this race who can make that case. I'm the only candidate in this race who points out in almost every speech I give, maybe not every, but in many of the speeches I give, the first official words of the first president of the United States were these, the first official proclamation, I should say. It is the duty of all nations to acknowledge the providence of Almighty God, to obey his will, to be grateful for his benefits, and to humbly implore his favor and protection. The father of our nation, the first official proclamation, that's what he said. And you got people running around who think they're smarter than George Washington. And I say you got people who haven't built an anthill, criticizing people who laid the foundation for the greatest nation mankind has ever seen. And I believe that I'm the only candidate who talks about the fact that the Mayflower Compact, the Jamestown Covenant, were based upon proclaiming the gospel of Jesus Christ to lost people on this continent and around the world. It wasn't about slavery. It wasn't about racism. Of course, these idiots running around Black Lives Matter and frankly the Democrat Party, they want to equate Christianity with racism. I mean, it just goes to show how demonic they've become. I'm the only candidate who is making that case. And I'm going to continue to make it. And I believe as God blesses me that the Christian community understands that they've got a candidate in me who is going to make that case. They're going to gravitate to me because nobody else can do it. Even Donald Trump can't do it. So for people who say, well, you know, nobody is going to beat Donald Trump, hey, you had a long way to the conclusion of this election. A long way. Almost a year. A little less than a year. I think the last primaries end in June. This will probably be decided late spring. We got a long way to get to that. So, with men, things are impossible, but not with God. All things are possible with God, and all things are possible to them that believe. So, you tell everybody you know, you better not count him out. You better not write him off. You'd be making a big mistake. Okay, look, I got a couple of things I want to share with you before I have to go. And by the way, next week, I'll give you the details later, and I'll be live streaming along the way. But I am making my first official border visit as a candidate for president. So stand by for that. You'll hear more about that later. I want to bring up 3 incidents in the time I've got remaining. And I'm sure you all have heard the polls about the low level of patriotism in our country, how it's the lowest since Gallup has been taking measurements of where people stand on the country. The number of people who are extremely proud of America is at about 38%. Well, as it turns out, among young adults, Gen Zers, only 18% of them. That's less than 1 in 5 who says, I'm very proud of my country. Now, we understand pride here, not in the sinful sense, but by being proud means I'm glad that I'm an American. I'm grateful that I'm an American. I really love my country. That's what that boils down to. Because I didn't build America. So it's not like I can look at it and say, look at what I've done. You know, some kind of pride in authorship. I can't do that. Take some gratification authorship of this book, but not the authorship of this country, because I've inherited the country. I didn't build it. I've inherited it. But I want to say something to you about these polls that we're seeing, because I want you to understand something about why they're so important. We are in the middle of a cultural revolution in our country. Make no mistake about it. The left is on the march. It's like Mao's long march through China. The left is on a long march through the institutions of our country, and they are committed to what Barack Obama formulated as the fundamental transformation of this nation. Now, I'm not sure exactly what that's going to look like, but I can tell you this, that in substance, it's going to be tyrannical and totalitarian. Now, how can you say that? That seems a bit far-fetched. Why would you say that? Because you see the signs of it now. You see government colluding with big tech to censor people based on government's definition of what misinformation is and disinformation is. You saw the Biden administration trying to actually create a disinformation agency that would be responsible for telling people what they should and should not listen to, and ultimately telling big tech and the other media what we can and cannot or should and should not hear or read. Folks, that's straight out of the communist playbook. That's not America. That's not, I may not agree with what you say, but I will defend to the death your right to say it. No, that's, if I don't agree with what you say, I'm going to do everything in my power to shut you up, shut you down, deplatform you, and stop you from being heard. That's what the media is doing to me in my candidacy right now. But I've got something they don't understand. Your prayers and support. And I'm telling you, they don't understand the power of that. Prayer is the most powerful tool available to human beings. And I feel sorry for the people who don't understand that. So they can just sit back and watch and see what prayer does. But this is about what we're witnessing is, and this cultural revolution, one of its elements is, you have to demoralize people. You have to convince people that what they have in their nation is not worth preserving. You've got to convince them that America's systemically racist, that America's white supremacist, that America's unjust, that America's homophobic, that America's sexist, that America's... You've got to convince people that this is a terrible country as it presently exists. Let us remake it for you. We've got a wonderful utopia we're going to give you. You see that in the redefinition of freedom of speech. Well, freedom of speech does not include hate speech. Well, what's hate speech? What I don't agree with. Now, the Bible may say homosexuality is sin. The Bible may say transgenderism and cross-dressing and drag queen nonsense, craziness is sin. That's hate speech, E.W. Jackson. You can't say that. Richard Levine may want to call himself Rachel. I call him Richard. Oh, that's hate speech. You can't call him Richard. You can't use you can't misgender him. You can't use the wrong pronouns. And thank God I'm living independently of that entire system. But if you work for a corporation, or you work in the government, or in many other industries, even some of them in the nonprofit world, and you say what I've just said, you get fired. You're done. Your career is over. So that's moving us toward a totalitarian state by first introducing the principle of totalitarianism and tyranny through the culture. You bring the cultural pressure. That's why when people would say, well, big tech is private industries. The First Amendment does not apply. I said, if you really think, this is before we even found out that the government was colluding with big tech. I said, but if you really think that big tech is not in some ways an arm of the government, you are sadly mistaken. And now it turns out that the government was explicitly working with them, not unbeknownst to us, but explicitly working with them to censor people and to tell big tech what they should and should not allow to be published. See, so that's the direction in which we're moving. How do you get that done? You convince people that something's got to happen, because otherwise America's such a terrible country and we're so unjust that without that, we'll never be the utopia that we can be made to be. You can't stand on the Constitution that was written by a bunch of slave owners and racists. You can't stand on religious liberty. That's just a cloak for people's homophobia and transphobia. And you certainly can't stand on the Second Amendment, because obviously the gun is nothing but an evil instrument that is causing death all over the country. Not the criminals, the guns. Not the prosecutors, the George Soros prosecutors who are releasing violent criminals back on the streets to hurt other people. No, no, no. It's the guns. So we got to curtail the Second Amendment rights of the American people, or maybe just ignore the Second Amendment. If we can't do away with it, just ignore it, because it's so terrible. Just like America in general is so terrible. And when you get enough people believing that, you get a situation like you had in France when Hitler marched into France and in 6 weeks took over the whole nation and turned France into a Nazi slave nation, which is what they had in mind for the whole world. Now we have got a communist, rogue, evil entity called the Communist Party of China. And these people are godless and wicked and twisted. And if they have their way, they will subjugate the American people. And right now, they're infiltrating every institution of our culture and economy. Our colleges, our universities, our farms, buying up land masses near our bases, investing in our companies, basically taking over and controlling our manufacturing base. While the American people are told, well, we're such a terrible country. I've even heard some of these leftists say, you know, maybe we need to be taken over by someone else. That's how bad it is. We can't allow that to happen. My book, Sweet Land of Liberty, Reflections of a Patriot Descended from Slaves, makes the case for why we ought to love America. I don't care what the color of your skin is. Why you ought to be grateful every day of your life that you're an American. I'm reading a book now called, I think it's called Englishmen in Slavery. And it's talking about the whole history of slavery in England. And of course, as I've argued many times, it's basically making the case that slavery was a reality in England long before the African slave trade started. The English were enslaved by the Romans. The Irish were enslaved by the English. But people want to make slavery in America, America's a terrible nation because America had slavery. The whole world had slavery. but only one nation founded itself on the principle we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal and endowed by our Creator with inalienable rights, and that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. No other nation has been founded on that principle. And the left wants to take that away from us, and when they do that, they destroy what we have. Let me raise two other quick things, and then I'll tell you what you can do to continue to help me. There is, of course, an epidemic of heart attacks of young people around the nation. The latest is Bronny James, who was LeBron James' son, who suffered a cardiac arrest incident. He's doing better now. We thank God for that. Be praying for him. And Elon Musk made the point that the myocarditis and the heart problems caused by the mRNA shot needs to be looked into. And of course, the left has gone crazy. Why? Because this became an opportunity for them to teach people to submit to their control. And they don't want that questioned. They want the American people not to learn the lesson that, you submit to that and you could end up dying because these people don't really have your best interest at heart and they don't know what's good for you, but they want to be able to dictate to you what's good for you and have you submit to it, and this is the result. They don't want you thinking that. They want you thinking that when they speak, you bow. And let me tell you something, folks. This brings me to the last incident to which you may be surprised for me to draw this analogy, but I think you'll find it compelling. I'm sure you all have heard about Commander, the beautiful golden shepherd that the Bidens have at the White House, having bit somewhere between 7 and 10 Secret Service agents. I've heard both numbers. I've heard 7, I've heard 10. But obviously, he's multiple. That proves it. He's bitten Secret Service agents on multiple occasions, put one in the hospital. What am I saying? What's the analogy? The analogy is this, and this is not Commander's fault, by the way, and I'm a dog lover. When you have people who theoretically talk about the poor and the black and the Hispanic and the this and the that, and they're so compassionate, and we gotta save the people. You gotta save these people. Their compassion is all theoretical, and it's all based on their thirst for power. It's not based on real concern for real human beings in front of them. Now, you've got 7 Secret Service agents who've been injured, 1 put in the hospital, and yet they have not done anything about Commander's penchant to bite. They have not done anything to kind of create a circumstance in which Commander can't hurt people. I've heard one dog specialist talk about a certain kind of muzzle that doesn't harm the dog and leaves the dog capable of eating but not capable of biting people, that kind of thing. Or maybe just finding a home for the dog where, you don't have these kinds of incidents taking place. But they don't care about these Secret Service agents because they don't really care about people. You say, well, how can you say that? Well, okay, 1 bite, you say, well, maybe that's an odd, that's a one-off. 2 bites, maybe still. But 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, maybe 8, 9, 10, a Secret Service agent put in the hospital. I mean, what does it take for you to say, hey, we're doing a disservice to these human beings working around us to serve us because we're putting them in harm's way. We got to do something about Commander. And again, I'm a dog lover. I don't blame Commander. In fact, they had another dog, I think named Major, that had the same problem. I'm thinking there's something wrong with the Bidens. But there's certainly something wrong with their unwillingness to do something to protect the people who are charged with protecting their very lives. And the point is, folks, liberals don't care about people. They care about power. And their concern with people is only insofar as those people help them to get and keep power. Their real compassion for real human beings is non-existent. In fact, I mean, I dare say they're kind of like sociopaths or psychopaths. They don't have any real concern for people, They only have this grandiose view of themselves as some kind of messianic figures who are saving the masses, when they have a real opportunity to do something to try to help real people who need their help and need their assistance to be kept safe. They don't do it. And you can look at their policies across the board and see that's exactly the way they behave in every single instance. If it doesn't serve their thirst for power, they could care less what happens to you. Just like the border. Just like with COVID. They could care less. Okay, that's going to do it. Look, I need you, we're still asking you to join us with the 20-20-20 Path to Victory. Pray for me 20 minutes a week. And again, I'm not asking you to set aside a special time to pray for me, but during your prayer time, just pray for me and pray for my campaign. And I really mean that. That is a sincere request, not a throwaway line that I say because that sounds really Christian. No, folks, I need your prayers. I'm serious about that. Number two, $20.24. Give it once, give it twice, give it as often as you can. If you can only do it once, do it once. And then talk to 20 friends. And as I said, 20 may seem like a high number. So maybe 15, or maybe 10, or maybe 5, or maybe 3, or maybe 2. But talk to somebody. Okay, talk to somebody and tell them, hey, there's a candidate running that I support. His name is E.W. Jackson. He's a pastor. He's a man of God. And the central theme of his campaign is that America must return to the Lord. America must return to the Lord. I'll tell you this as I end, folks. I don't see the American people as some sort of theoretical mob, but as a group of individuals, a family. And I care about them because I've seen the goodness and the decency, the honor, the integrity, the compassion of Americans. I've experienced it. I want us to preserve that. I don't want us torn apart by all this racial and class envy that the Democrat Party is stoking in the country. I want us to come together as one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. True liberty, true justice, not this artificial counterfeit stuff that the left is trying to sell us, which is really, again, nothing but their own power play. And they just cloak it in these terms because they know this sounds good to people. So God bless each and every one of you. Thank you for your support. Thank you for your prayers, your contributions. Go to our website, ewjacksonforpresident.com, ewjacksonforpresident.com. And by the way, when you post on Twitter, when you post on Facebook, and you mention me, put my website down there for people to see, ewjacksonforpresident.com. Very simple, very straightforward. In the meantime, you stand up, step up, speak up, refuse to back up, because we cannot be defeated if we will not quit, because we are on God's side.